Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Iowa State is monitoring corn rootworm. Was this past winter enough to manage this pest? Ben addresses the hard-hitting question, should I plant corn or soybeans first? And we talk about the benefits of Merschman PowerCore Enlist corn paired with our starting line corn seed treatment and Meristem Revline hopper throttle corn.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars. We have Lynn, Dylan, and Ben. And Dylan, it sounds like you're going to start first today.
Yeah, Iowa State, they put out an article on Friday about corn rootworm, and the article was this a harsh winter for corn rootworm? So they've gotten more and more chatter about if this winter was cold enough to maybe kill some of the larvae that always overwinters, but it sounds like they're kind of optimistic, but because on a normal year, the female try to lay their eggs 4 to 6 inches deep in the ground, but then in some dry years they go even deeper because they find the drought cracks or something like that. And obviously, once we get deeper, they're going to be harder to kill because the temperature just doesn't change as much as maybe the top 4 to 6 inches. But we go into January. There was not much. There's not much snow cover, so they were kind of optimistic that maybe some of the colder temperatures maybe would have knocked off some of them, but it's not very promising because just the temperatures really didn't get below much under 32, really the soil moistures, but then the coldest days were in February 16th to the 21st throughout the whole state of Iowa. But the only problem with that is that we had a lot of snow cover in the majority of the state, so that adds an insulator, and then it doesn't help, I guess, kill a larvae that are going to start to hatch come May. So May is a time frame that they'll begin to hatch. Then that's when Iowa State and really anybody can really start to see if the winter kind of killed anything. Because then
it's actually dealing with, I think what everybody looks for is lightning bugs. It's the same number of heat units. Then when you see the lightning bugs, then every time I see a lightning bug, I think, oh boy, rootworms are hatching. So it's kind of the same thing. It's a leading indicator of same number of heat units that matches up, I guess.
Yeah, and then the females, they kind of try to seek out the moisture to help the larvae kind of survive for the upcoming year. But then the dry soils can be hard on it. But then the wet and compacted areas are where we're going to kind of see the larvae decrease in numbers. So the oversaturated areas will actually drown out the larvae, which can help. But we also don't want the drought and a lot of moisture either. So it's a good article. We can put it up in the link, and everyone can read it.
Yeah, I hope it got cold enough. I think we had areas here locally, we were probably 16, 17 inches of frost put in the ground. I imagine areas to the north were bumping that 2.5 foot frost line. So I personally know because I had to chip out 16, 17 inches of frost. So
yeah,
hopefully it helped.
Yeah, they're optimistic, but time will only tell. So
yep.
And we were due. I mean, last year we had virtually no frost, and then year before that was the same. In the scenario you were talking about, had the coldest times with probably a foot of snow for most of southeast Iowa. So it's definitely welcome to have that frost in the ground, not only from the rootworm, but do some of the fracture in the hard pans that potentially are down below, and provide some deep soil moisture to our soils. But always good when we can take out a pest as well.
Well, you can always put out pheromone traps in the summer at hatch time and see what's going into the soybean field too, and as another way as a predictor of how many eggs were laid. So there's many ways to control rootworm beetle besides traits and insecticides. I think the other way you can do is actually spray the field with insecticide, and by that I mean the cornfield, and kill them before they lay the eggs. But it's a kind of a timing thing that's pretty tough, I think.
Yep, you got to be out and scouting to know when to pull the trigger on that.
I think with rootworm, for here locally, what would be important too is we have typically not seen the western come in, and last year I found Western for the first time. You've had some on your side of the county, but not on the western side of the county. So it's good to identify which one you're dealing with, because each one brings a little bit of a unique scenario. Over west side of the county, Van Buren County, southern rootworm tends to be something we see a lot in the CRP and the grasses. Really not a concern for corn, but seeing northern and westerns is something we definitely need to keep an eye on as far as moving forward with adding either insecticide back to the plant or using products like GuardX, or even taking the evolution out to that. Right now, the threshold seemed very, very mild, but it's something that I'm looking to keep an eye on as we move forward into the growing season for this year.
Isn't there some talk about the extended diapause? It's even longer than 2 years now in some cases.
I'm not very well read on the extended diapause portion of things, but I know it has a hot spot in northern Illinois, eastern Illinois, and eastern Iowa.
So that, what the moral of the story is, basically the rootworms are constantly evolving to offset what man is doing,
Right. Yep. They are smart little boogers, that's for sure. So I had gotten a phone call multiple times at the beginning of this week talking about whether we should be planting corn or soybeans first. I think the beginning of this coming week, the forecast looks pretty favorable. I think things should be dried out in a lot of portions of our sales footprint. And guys are wondering, they're looking at the April 15th, April 12th time frame, and they're wondering, which direction should I go? So the guys that have a tendency to be a little bit more no-till on soybeans really want to be planting corn. And my message for those guys is, that's fine. I'm fine with planting corn at this time of year. I think there's some yield advantage when we get our corn planted from the 15th of April to the 20th of April, but we don't want that corn sitting in the ground for 2.5, 3 weeks. And if that corn is going to be sitting in the ground for 2 weeks, what are all the things that can start working against it? So I definitely don't recommend guys that don't know what their saturated colds, they don't know what their vigor is on their corn, they don't know what the fast green test or how many nicks that the embryo has in it. If you don't know any of those things, I'm going to suggest either waiting or getting the bean stuck in the ground first. But for those guys that are ready to go on corn, there's things we can do to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward. And I don't think I'd be going out there with just a standard seed treatment.
Well, Ben, we do all those things that you just talked about, and we know all those answers, and we know that our corn hybrids, particularly the 111 day, can be planted first. Is that right?
Yeah. No, the 111 day typically will come out of the ground a day and a half, maybe even 2 days earlier than the hybrids next to it. So.
And we do the saturated cold test. We do the green paracarp test. We do everything we can to make sure that we have extremely high quality corn. Plus, I know you want to talk about the seed treatment.
Yeah.
Piece of it.
So one of the things that happens when we're planting early, you can get the fusarium stalk rot diseases that will creep in the longer that seedling is in the ground and trying to germinate, trying to get above ground. The longer that is in either cool, wet conditions, the more susceptibility that you'll have to infection when that plant is in the seedling stage. So when we have multiple effective fungicides that are in our seed treatment, we can fight against those fusarium diseases. So I wouldn't be going out there with just a standard, Poncho 250 Votivo style of seed treatment. We have 5 effective fungicides, and we're working on everything from Pythium. We have 2 modes of action with the metalaxyl and ethoboxam. We have the carboxin and the ipecacuanazole, which are both working on the fusariums that I was just talking about. And then we have this 5th fungicide that we added in late to the season last year called pyloxystrobin, which is stamina. And that is one of our secret ingredients when it comes to the fungicide that gives us an extra boost of vigor and an extra boost of cold tolerance early on in the season.
It's not a secret anymore. You just told everybody.
Well, it's in the book.
But yeah, I know. I realize that. But the point we're trying to say is, don't ask me why. I'm a soybean guy, and when it comes to corn seed treatments, the corn people are the tightest people in the world. They just do not want to spend money in many companies. Or they stay with their one product lineup that their manufacturers produce for them because they're a chemical company, and they're just not looking at this high value crop like we do. And we think, wow, we need to put as much seed treatment and much investment around that seed as possible, because we all know, a perfectly uniform stand means high yields. Yep. And another reason to buy Merschman corn is because we use the soybean mentality on our corn and say, well, 50 cents more for that seed treatment, spend it, because it's a good investment. And we're not limited in any way. And that's the independent nature of our company. And these guys are farmers, and they see what this stuff can do, and they want it on their field. So consequently, that's why we have the best seed treatment.
Right. So you're protecting yourself from the fusarium stalk rot that could potentially happen on that plant's a seedling. We got those lines covered, but we also have the tripidity in that mix, and that tripidity is going to work to help give the most uniform, fast emerging stand that you can get out there. And that's for people that listen to Cup of Joe very regularly, they know what tripidity is. But to hit it home again, we have a blend of nutrients that are in that tripidity portion of things that help get that plant off to the right message and make sure it's got just a little bit of food source so that it's going to take off. We have the amino acids and plant extracts. Those are giving the plant the same message, the same signals that, hey, it's time to go. Even though it's cold, we have all the right messages to push that on forwards. And then we also have the hormones that are also helping message that corn plant to get it up and rolling. So I'm extremely proud of the seed treatment that we have. And I think when we are planting in a little bit cooler than expected conditions, I'm way less nervous about sticking our corn out when I know we're going to have the 4-inch soil temperature. It's going to drop probably down into the 45s by the end of the next week, beginning of the following. So it's not smooth sailing. We're not looking at corn that's going to be popping out of the ground in 4 or 5 days after planting. The corn's probably going to be sitting in the ground for 2 weeks, maybe even a little bit longer than that, depending on what that long range temperature outlook looks like. But when you look at our seed treatment and then you turn around and pair it with products like our Revline Hopper Throttle corn with ether, I think you have an unbeatable match for what it takes to get this corn in the ground, protect the yield potential of that product. Because if you look, there's a lot of similarities between what's happening, and that doesn't mean that there's a lot of similarities between what we have in the tripidity and the seed treatment and some of the things that are happening in the Revline Hopper Throttle corn plus ether, because you have some of the same nutrients that are in the mix. You have iron and manganese and zinc in both tripidity and the Meristem product. You have ways of solubilizing phosphorus, whether that be through the
Terracim.
Yep, whether it be that be through the Terracim, whether that be through the ether, whether that be through some of the bacillus strains or the azobacter strains that are in the mix there. You're really adding a 1-2 punch for not only getting germination off and getting the corn plants out of the ground, but then allowing that corn plant to uptake the nutrients that it needs, building the biggest root system that it possibly can have to push things forward. So that's kind of my pitch this week when it comes to whether we plant corn or soybeans first. I personally think that guys, if the field conditions are right, should be focusing on soybeans. They should be focusing on soybeans and making sure they're planting them at least 1.5 inches in the ground in case we have a late or an early May frost, and those beans would potentially be out of the ground. So keep them in the ground just a little bit longer. But if the ground conditions are fit because you work your corn ground, or the fields are a little bit drier, if you're planting Merschman corn that has the Merschman seed treatment, the starting line seed treatment on it, and you're a customer that has the some of the Meristem products built into your plan, I'm not near as nervous for a guy that's starting to plant Monday, Tuesday next week.
I'll be the negative Nancy now. Maybe the voice of reason, we'll see. But yeah, you bring up great points, and I think what that looks at, the same conversations I've probably had with a few guys is this, Saturday afternoon into Sunday here locally, we're going to be into the 70s, and it's going to be really hard not to go out there. Looking on the backside, it gets pretty cool until we get back into Friday, Saturday. So I agree. If someone, if they cover a lot of acres, they have to get going. I'm confident that we're going to see a decent corn stand come out of what's planted, on Saturday and Sunday. I don't like it. I'm in that boat. I want my corn out of the ground in 5 days, and I'll wait. But I understand other folks don't have to. But we have given almost every physical protection that we can to our seed treatment and the hopper throttle that you can go out and do it. If you have to get going, maybe it's not the most ideal scenario, but I mean, we don't live in a world of absolute, so sometimes you have to take a gamble. I kind of equate it to this is a little bit of Thursday night in college. Everyone's going out for wing night, and you've got a big test the next day. You can go out, but should you go out? Probably not. There's going to be some folks in that. If you can get your stuff planted in 2 or 3 days, I think there's probably a better window. But depending on your conditions, and I think to your point, if the soil is fit, and what we mean by fit, we've said it before, maybe not necessarily temperature, but it's the moisture. I mean, there's not a big reason to get in too big of a hurry if you're wet. We have some great drying conditions coming up. Don't push the envelope if you're even looking at beans as well. But we have given everything that we can to succeed on our end. Just maybe be a little bit patient if you're not completely fit, and you have the opportunity to get stuff done in 2 or 3 days. If you're someone that has to cover a lot of distance or a lot of acres, absolutely understand it. We've given you the tools to be as successful as you can. So just do it. It's going to make you the most successful. But other than that, right now, looking at the industry, I'm not sure what more that can be put on out there to ensure the as greatest chance of success as you can. We're playing the game of probability, and you're probably stacked as full as you can get right now.
Yep. No, I completely agree. I have some more yield data here coming from Precision Planting 2008 to 2024 planting day results. They're looking at basically the last half of April is probably the best time to be getting your soybeans planted anyway, and we're going to be entering that very shortly. They're looking at 11.8 bushel yield advantage of basically comparing last half of April to first half of May. So there's some good data that spans over 6 years there. And they have basically the yield on a chart that basically schedules that the second week of April or the third week of April is probably the right time to be getting your soybeans stuck in the ground. So there's some data there that we can throw up. Guys can take a closer look at. And then I also have from our friends at Bear Crop Sciences, they've done a bunch of studies over the past 5 or 6 years, 2018 to 22, so it'd be 4 years, and they have some really nice data talking about where yield comes from. It's just basically a different look at what we have talked about, whether it be Ken Ferry's chart or anybody else, but they talk about number of nodes, number of main stem nodes per plant. If you have an April 12th planting date, you're looking at, their data suggests somewhere in the 14 to 16, and by the time you get into the May, you're looking at that 12 nodes. That's 6, 7, 8 bushel.
It's all about vegetative growth. If you extend the vegetative growth, you're going to get more nodes. And soybeans are what you call a short day plant. They start maturing as the days shorten up. So if you get more days that are going longer, you get more nodes. So that's the name of the game. But unfortunately, there's still another 1,000 variables besides planting date that affect yield.
Yep, you're absolutely correct.
I think it's important to note, if you haven't seen some of our previous episodes talking about why the main nodes are important, it's important because those are typically the ones that are the least likely to be aborted when that plant goes into stress. So something that has nodes on the branches, we'll see those abort, and then we'll start seeing it from the bottom to the top. So the more we stack on the main, the more I guess not cushion, but the more likely we're going to have a high yield. And then, when we start looking at products like our Kennedy's, when you look at what it puts on the main, it was not uncommon to see five clusters, three bean pods on that main stem. So those main nodes are very important for the overall yield portfolio for our soybeans.
It's yield stability.
Yep. And I think you want to put everything in perspective. And I remember Ray Kinnick, who was our Gufson advisor on seed treatment, and he explained that, what's different today versus when our grandfather farmed. And the difference is our grandfathers probably plowed, and we had that black dirt, or we had everything exposed and it warmed up quicker. Now we have more residue, we have more trash on the surface, so it doesn't warm up as much. And plus, back then we planted with 4-row planters, So if you went out and planted early, well, how much did you get covered? Not very much. Now we have 12 row, 16 row, 24 row, 48 row. We have these huge planters. So now when we go out and plant, we just increase the amount of risks that we're taking tremendously, because what we can do in an hour is incredible. So everything we just talked about, it's all about risk and how much you can and you want to take. But over the years, we have changed the way we farm, and then we're going so much faster. So we can either be 100% right or 100% wrong. So that's the hard part about farming. And but I think with what we've done, we've tried to make sure that we're minimizing that risk for you in that large planter. And I agree with everything you've said about the soil. The soil's got to be in good shape. That's really important, because that'll make a big difference when we have all these seed treatments to back you up.
Yep. The only other thing I didn't mention would be an in-furrow fungicide. That would be another mode of action that you'd be able to build on top of our seed treatment and the 5 different fungicides that we have. So an in-furrow fungicide, or a product that's going to be widely adapted to next year, would be a product like the Meristem Max Defense, or the Meristem Max Stacks would be another one for next year that has some biological fungicidal attributes to it. So whether you be running Xyway or a little bit different product in furrow for your fungicide, that would be another way to help against some of the crown rot disease issues out there on corn. So I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, well, more than likely we're making everybody think about it anyhow. And again, that 112-day hybrid that Merschman Seeds has in a PowerCore and also conventional is one of the strongest, fastest emerging hybrids we know of in the industry. So if you're going to take some risks, stack the deck a little bit with that hybrid. Start with that one. Anyhow, let's get to the jokes. And we're only about a week away from Easter, so I thought we better start talking about some of the Easter jokes. But before I get into the Easter jokes, Ben, I know you like horses, and I know you're really into soil and stuff. So I thought, well, I got to find something about soils as being an agronomist. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. Why did the farmer bury his money, Ben? Why did the farmer bury his money?
No idea.
He wanted to make his soil rich. Okay, that makes sense. So, all right. Okay, now let's get into another one before we get into Easter ones. Is what kind of bean? What kind of bean can't you grow in your garden? What kind of bean can't you grow in your garden? A jelly bean, okay? Now we're leading into the Easter jokes, okay?
Yep.
Why did the baby chick cross the road? Why did the baby chick cross the road? To meet up with her peeps. Peeps are very popular for Easter.
You got them in your desk already, Dylan? Yeah.
They're pretty good. Why did the Easter bunny fail? Why did the Easter bunny fail? This relates a little bit to what we just talked about. He put all his eggs in one basket. In other words, he planted everything in one day, Could be a good day or a bad day. How does the Easter bunny travel? Do you ever think about that? How does the Easter bunny travel? By hairplane, H-A-R-E, H-A-R-E, okay? And why do you need an Easter egg hunting license? I bet you didn't even know that. Why do you need an Easter egg hunting license? Because no poaching is allowed. No poaching. Okay, and the fried eggs, poached eggs. Okay, Here we go. If we got to explain them, they're usually not too good, right? And the last one, this will make you smile. What did the gray rabbit say to the blue rabbit? Cheer up. Well, we better get out of here while we can. Anyhow, thanks for watching today. We sincerely appreciate your business. Please be careful this spring as you start to plant. It's important to your family, And hope you're healthy and safe. We'll see you next week.